All right, we want to show you guys a quick overview of the service. So we got Dan Christensen here, founder of Bigfoot Pest Control. So let's just go through a quick service. Can you show us the truck, Dan, and kind of different products that we use and what you use them for?
Yeah, so let me just walk you through this a little bit. This is kind of the bare bones setup. Every truck will be equipped with a water tank, a water source, that will probably fill up each day, and then that'll cover 8, 10, 12, maybe even more services, depending on how many times we have to fill up, size of home, that sort of thing. And then each one will have a de-webber pole or a web wand, whatever you want to call it. This is for the spider webs, the wasp nests. It's really good for getting into the cracks and the crevices and the eaves especially. Most of these actually go up over 20 feet, and so it can get over into the second story eaves, and there are other poles that we have that even go up further. Here's where we'll keep our products, in a truck bed or in a truck box. Each time we do a service, we'll put on our gloves, these Bigfoot orange gloves, and then we'll have rodent bait for bait stations, and we'll have a bunch of different products depending on what they have, right? So if somebody asks, what product do you use? You say, well, it depends. What are you seeing, right? Because if there's an ant issue, we are definitely not going to spray certain products, and we might even take different actions. We have ant gel that we can put under their counters or in their cupboards or different things like that. And then for spiders, we have a specific product, but a couple that you can just mention to customers: Onslaught Fast Cap, Bifin IT, and Taurus SC. And those are for the different types of pests. Some of them are broad spectrum, some of them are more specific, but you can kind of memorize those, and those are going to be some that we use almost every service.
So what does it mean that the products are pyrethroids?
So pyrethroids, that's another, it depends. Depending on what product they are, they were originally derived from a chrysanthemum flower. And now they've done a lot of lab testing, and some of them are actually, you would call them a fourth generation synthetic pyrethroid. But what that basically means is that it was originally not exactly organic. You can't say organic, but it works really well for bugs because it automatically repels them, and they've made it so it'll actually kill them. Typically they last 60 to 90 days, hence our quarterly service. And we come 4 times a year. And if people need more services, absolutely, we'll just come out for free. That's what they're getting with their guarantee. And what else?
Yeah, can you show some of the products in here?
Yep, so most of these come in either pint or gallon sized jugs. This is Onslaught Fast Cap. This is over $200 per gallon. So it is not cheap, but it works really, really well. And we only use, 1 to 3 ounces per 2 gallons that we use in the backpack sprayers.
And so you'll mix it up in these backpacks right here.
Yep, that's right. So we'll add it to, this one has Bifin IT already loaded in there. We'll put it from here, the water goes in here, and then we'll add a little bit of the product, shake it up, and then we start spraying. Usually the foundation first, and then if we can, we don't want to spray the eaves every single time if there's any drift, if there's any wind present, because it could get on the windows, all right? That's important because people don't want to have to do extra work just because we came out. We're supposed to be the convenient option.
And then, so is that a power sprayer, or, because some companies power spray?
Yeah, so there are companies out there, and we actually had a 50-gallon power sprayer hooked up to our rig at the beginning, but we were also dragging a 100-foot hose around the house, and it would get caught on stuff. And it was causing more problems than it was good for. And so this is the best of both worlds. It's not a hand pump, which some companies use. This actually has a battery, a rechargeable battery right here. And so it's a power backpack sprayer. And it can get all the way up into the top eaves because it is adjustable with how much pressure there is. It is probably the gold standard for the industry right now, I would say. We can adjust it depending on how far and how, what type of, what do you call it? Drift, not drift. What do you call that?
Spray nozzle?
Yeah, it has different nozzle settings so that we can make the droplet size change, okay? So we can drift it on a larger area or get really pinpoint accuracy. So these are amazing. and we usually keep two, one for a repellent product and one for a non-repellent, because if you mix them, then it actually has the opposite effect. It'll just nullify what they are. And so that's why we keep two backpacks in each truck. And we're all about safety, right? So the technicians have to triple rinse these at least once a week, and they're keeping everything. We do everything by the book.
So is the product safe?
Yeah, absolutely. So on the doors, I would probably mention it being family friendly, environmentally friendly. In Idaho, we can say safe.
So what makes like a good service and a good technician? Like what does a good technician look out for, and what makes one company's service maybe better than another's?
So obviously as a company, we want technicians who are efficient. They go and do their job really well, and then they can do their next job. If they did 2-hour jobs all day, they could probably take care of 7 or 8 services. We want them to do double that. But the next thing is they have to be aware, okay? So they need to be aware of their surroundings. They need to be able to inspect the property as they go, and then use their noggin to make the decisions based upon what they see and what the customer needs. So every service might be slightly different. If somebody mentions rodents, I'm going to be focusing 90% of my time on those rodents. I'm going to go and look around the property, make sure I see any holes or places they could get in, placing bait boxes. If they say, you know what, I just signed up for the wasp nests. Okay, well, I am inspecting the eaves very carefully. I'm inspecting the fence lines. That's where they love. And so I'm gonna spend my time doing what the customer needs, and based upon the inspection that I perform while I'm doing the service.
What type of notes do you hope that a salesman will leave for a job?
Like I said, if they sign up for a specific reason, the technician needs to know that reason, because it might not be obvious or apparent as they are just walking around the house that this person's son is allergic to wasps and bees, right? And if we know that, then we're going to spend a lot more time on that aspect of it, whereas granulation and spraying the generic foundation or whatever may not cover that very well. So leave any important notes on why they signed up, their trigger words, or their hot what do you call them, hot button issues. Yeah. You want to leave those for sure. You want to leave notes about the property, like if there's gates or backyards or maybe a pool in the back, and especially if they have a dog that might bite or a kid that might bite. You got to let us know that sort of thing so that we can be prepared. And I would err on the side of leaving more thorough notes than less. Okay, if they just say ant issue, well, that's good. That gets us a good start. But if they were to say, there's ants in the kitchen, that also means I'm going to have to get my hand tank and spray her out, and not just spray the foundation with Taurus SC. So it's a very different service depending on what you put. So be more thorough rather than less.
Are there some specific products that you can show us that are better for different pests?
So like I mentioned, Taurus is technically it's a termiticide, okay? But since termites and ants behave in similar ways, it works really, really well for ants. And this is what you would call a non-repellent. So the ants walk across it for days on end and spread it to the colony without even knowing they're infected. And then it takes out the entire colony. But if we didn't know that there was ants, we might use something like Bifin IT or Onslaught Fast Cap. And these would be repellents. So the first ant that gets to that repellent, it will turn right back around. It might die, but it doesn't really help kill the colony. It doesn't actually take out the ants at their source. And Fast Cap, this was originally derived to kill scorpions. So it's really good stuff. It penetrates those exoskeletons, which also makes it really good for spiders. So if somebody has a spider issue, we need to know that, because we're probably going to use a product like this rather than more of a broad spectrum pesticide like Bifin IT.
How do you treat the inside? Is there a smell, or do customers complain about stuff? Like
Generally, people don't even notice a smell. If we end up spraying a lot of the house, like an entire baseboard treatment, we've had, it's probably 1 out of 100 that will say, oh, I didn't realize there was going to be an odor. And so we do mention it once in a while, but very, very little.
So not maybe in the sales process, you don't necessarily need to mention it.
And inside we would use a piece of equipment called like a B&G. It's just a hand tank sprayer. and these tips are brass, and so it works really well to get the droplet size so that it doesn't leave puddles and marks and streaks on the walls. And these things last like 20 years. Every part is replaceable. It's pretty amazing. They've been around for a long time.
Should we encourage the inside, or?
What I usually go back to is, if they ask, do I need the inside done? I say, well, what are you seeing on the inside? And if they're seeing a lot, then yeah, for sure, let's get the inside done, because we do ultimately want to take care of every pest that they have. However, since it is extra work for the technician, it's extra cost for the company. If they don't see anything inside, then let's just keep everything out, right? The outside will actually take care of 99% of the issues, because where are all the bugs coming from? They're coming from these nesting and breeding spots in the yard, in the bushes, in the trees. And so typically we don't need to do it. And if we do it the first time, typically we don't need to do it again. But again, if they have any issues in between services with spiders or ants on the inside or whatever, we'll definitely take care of it.
Well, what are the steps of the service? Can you kind of walk
Sure.
us through a quick thing?
So start with checking out the spider webs and the wasp nests up in the eave. See, this one's actually pretty clean, but I'll still go in here like this. See a little bit right there, a little bit right there. And once in a while we'll find it's absolutely shrouded in spider webs, and it takes a long time. So if that's the case, if it's a country home that has a lot of spider webs, I would ask for extra time for the technician to finish that. And you know, it might take an hour and a half instead of the regular 45 minutes or whatever.
You can show a little web up here. There's a little bit more kind of show knocking that one off.
Yep. So these poles work really well. These brushes, perfect.
And so this is pre-mixed.
Yep. So I just mixed it. Well,
so this is a bigger house. I think he said it was like 4,500 for the whole thing.
Yep. This might take 4 gallons.
So you'll have to remix 4 different times? Or how
No,
many
this
gallons?
is 4 gallons.
That's 4 gallons.
This whole
Okay,
thing is
cool.
4 gallons. A typical house, I can do 2 homes with just 1 full backpack.
Can you mix more than one product?
Yes. So we have what are called synergists, which are, it makes the product what I like to call hotter. So
Okay.
for example, it'll be a quicker knockdown. For like wasps and spiders, there's one that we really like called Exciter. And it does what it says. It excites the product and makes it hotter, so it kills them really fast. That's what you'd use if they have a really bad infestation.
So is that sort of because most products are designed to be long lasting and or maybe slightly on the safer side, and so they don't kill as quickly, so people might still see bugs for a few days?
So with the, yeah, potentially. I usually give it a week, right? A week or even 2, especially with the non-repellents. So if somebody calls us with a bunch of ants, the last thing we want them to do is call us back in 2 days and say, I still have ants. They need to go over the product multiple times, and it takes a couple weeks for them to actually take out the nest. And so there might be others that are a different, it has a different mode of action.
So it usually doesn't come up in the sale, but let's say it does. How long should someone wait before they quote unquote call in again? Because you have to balance like effectiveness, but also making the customer feel like they're getting their money's worth.
Right, and we're always going to take care of our customers. That's the first thing I want to say. If they call us back in 3 days, we're going to explain the service to them and explain how it works. But if they request us to come back out, we're just going to do it. But in general, I would say give it at least 2 weeks to see that knockdown, because they actually will probably see slightly more bugs because we just disrupted their habitat. Especially these spiders, we just disrupted their home. Some of them are running from the product, and so they might actually see more out in the open. Give it 2 weeks, and if things start getting uncomfortable again, let us know and we'll come back and treat again.
Cool. All right, go ahead and show us the spray.
So usually we go up about 3 feet, but on cement we don't need to do quite that much.
And then sort of they say in the industry, 3 feet up, 3 feet out. Like, is that?
Yep, that's a great rule of thumb. For example, there might be, like right here, I probably will just do like the crack and then a little bit up. But I'm not going to spray all this cement because there's nowhere for the product to go, And in doorways, quickly spray that, because bugs come in sometimes the same way we do, through the doors.
And then what do you do about kids' play stuff like this?
Boom. I'll move stuff out of the way if there is some, but typically because we are covering such a large area, if there's a 2-foot area that we don't get sprayed, it's probably not going to affect anything because bugs are moving, laterally all the time. And so eventually they'll come in contact with the spray. So if they have something butted up against the side, like we're not going to ask them to go and move everything away from the corners or anything. We'll just spray where we can.
What if there's like a whole wall of stuff and they're like, hey, do I need to move that? What should I normally say, hey, no big deal, we'll work around it. But then sometimes you're like, if there's so much that it's like, what do you do?
So most of the time where the bugs are congregating is where the humans aren't. So there's usually a side of your house where you put all your junk,
okay.
like the back alleyway. And most of the time people aren't worried if there's a few bugs there. So we'll just work around it. If somebody volunteers and says, I need to clean this up anyway, great. We'll encourage them to do it. But we don't want to make it extremely inconvenient for people. So we're not going to have them move furniture away from the walls if we do the inside. And we're not going to have them spend 3 hours cleaning up the side of their house. We'll just work where we can. And then if it becomes an issue, the technicians are trained to tell the homeowner in a nice way that we're working with them and they'll need to do their part. But most of the time,
so maybe lean on the side of, when in the sales process, convenience, knowing that most of the time a skipping parts of the home are going to get most of the bugs, and that's good enough. Then leave it on the technicians a few months later.
So we need to be building up the technicians as the professionals, because ultimately it's up to them to actually produce the product, which is peace of mind because there's no bugs. And so the technician, it's their call in the end. And so if they have really specific questions, give them a generic answer and then say, the technician in the end will be the decision maker here. And he will train you on what to look for, what to see, and when to call us back. We have a couple different types of granules. A granulator like this will be the one that we do the vast area, 30 feet to 50 feet out from the house. And we'll just put it like this, and it'll just spread it like a seed spreader or whatever. And then we also have, for spot treating, we have small granules that look like this, and this is actually a granular bait. So the different insects, this one has crickets and roaches and earwigs and pill bugs, silverfish, and we'll just sprinkle this where they're seeing them. Okay, so in plant beds or next to the house or whatever. This wouldn't be the thing that we spread out in the yard though, because it's very specifically a bait. And typically these are waterproof, so it can rain, they can do their sprinklers. And then the granules that we use specifically are water activated. So after they sprinkler their yard, that's when it's actually the most effective.
Do they need to do it right away, or is it okay if they wait a couple days?
To sprinkler their yard?
Yeah.
Usually I say do it within 24 hours, but if it doesn't, I don't think anything can happen between us spreading them and sprinkling, so not that big of a deal.
And then what about like a dog? What if a dog eats one of the granulars or licks one of the granulars?
So the biggest concern that we have is if the product that we spray is still wet and the dog's out there licking it, it's probably not the best thing for the dog. I've never seen a dog even get sick, but homeowners are usually more what we'll call it paranoid about that sort of thing. And so typically what we'd say is wait a half hour or an hour until the product is dry to let your pets out. The granular, I've never seen anything happen like that, and they would have to get a hold of this bag and eat the entire thing for them to feel it. So
yeah, actually I worked for a company 10 years ago where a dog ate the whole thing and he was just fine.
That's the only situation that I can think of with the granular. They can lick it up, and they might actually like to lick it up. Like, might have a weird taste for them or something, and dogs eat their own crap, so they'll probably eat and chew and bite anything.
Gotcha. Cool, well, I think the spreader, you don't need to show us. What do we do in the winter?
Winter services are important because, especially in our climate here in Boise, the winters can be pretty cold, but there's an influx of pests as soon as it hits 50 or 60 degrees. And if we already have product laid down on the house, we have everything set, then when those pests wake up, they come out of their dormancy over the winter, they're going to see a massive influx in the house and around the house unless they have a pest control service. Okay, and so, and not to mention, as it gets colder in the fall going into winter, a lot of these pests are making their way same as us, into some place that's warm, has a food source, and it's shelter. And so they're making their way really close to the home, and that's when we stop doing our granules. And we'll just focus our service on the, close around the house. And then we also do a lot of mice and other rodents around the house during the winter. So here's Delta Dust. It's one more tool in our tool belt that we can use. The cool thing about dust is it's forever residual. As long as it's there, it will continue to be effective. And so this is what we would use. It has a little puffer right here, and we would just puff it into cracks where they're starting to see bugs come from. And then
and
we
at
also,
the base of the home, isn't there like little holes that sometimes you can puff it into?
Yep, and it depends on what type of house there is. Like on brick homes, there's little weep holes for the water to come through the bricks, and a lot of times that's where the spiders and ants and different things will come from and nest inside there. So we'll dust inside those. Where there's siding, a lot of times we'll just go along the entire siding next to their front door and just puff through there. And like I said, as long as there's no deluge or heavy winds or whatever, this will last a long time.
And then in the winter, you have a machine, right, that does it?
Yep, that's right. I don't have one on me, but we put this dust inside of it, and then it actually has like a little straw where you can put it inside those cracks and just, and it puffs it in there, it billows it in there it almost looks like smoke consistency.
Gotcha. And so in the winter, you don't spray, but you use the...
Correct. As long as it's under freezing, we'll just do a dust service instead of spraying because it won't be quite as effective.
And then similarly, the crawl space, how does that work?
So crawl space, customers usually think they need crawl space, and pest controllers usually don't think we need it. And so it depends on how impactful it is to making the sale or keeping the customer, right? Because typically what we'll do in the crawl space is we'll go and take a look, and they're usually worried about rodents down there. So we'll put a bait box or lay some bait down there. But usually that's not necessary because they're usually coming in and out of the basement or crawl space. And if we just put bait boxes, it will attract them to that. And so it'll actually draw the mice out of the home, and that way we don't have to go in the crawl space very much. But again, if it's key to making a sale, the technicians are trained to be able to go into crawl spaces, take a look around, and as long as we're doing our work on the outside, normally it doesn't matter. Usually we don't need to.
And then what about treating through the vents?
That's the good work that we can do on the outside to prevent most of that. Preventing most of the need to go into the crawl space, because where are they getting in? Probably through those vents. So if we just billow dust through there around each side of the home, usually we're good.
Okay, cool. Do you treat for mice?
So every company does it a little bit differently. Obviously, I think the top way to ensure that mice get caught are by trapping. However, we would have to charge potentially thousands of dollars to come out every single day until their traps are done. Therefore, the most economical way for both the customer and the business, the company, is by using bait. Okay, so we use small bait boxes that can be put like under cupboards or away from homes, or large weighted bait boxes that we can put on the outside that are pet resistant, and it requires a key to get in there. And so we can show you one of the large bait boxes. The smaller ones, they just look like a little black box. But here's what a large one would look like. And it has holes. You would just put this up against the building. They'd go in there, and you can put, I believe it's 10 or 12 bait blocks in there. And each bait block should be able to kill 6 to 10 mice. And so if they're dealing with a big infestation, we'll probably use one of these, or larger mice, field mice can do that, can use these. They work really, really well. These are dog and child tamper resistant secured bait stations. It says it right there. And so we don't have to worry about pets getting in there. If they have a really large dog, we might put it somewhere where the dog is not, but we haven't had a dog get into one of these yet. So
how do you treat for voles?
Voles?
Yeah.
So voles, we use those same bait blocks, the same bait, but in a different type of station. So it looks like a T. It's like a big pipe with a T sticking up. We put the bait in the top part, and it filters down as they eat it. And we would just place it in a run. In a yard where they have voles, you can see little tracks where they like to go. I don't know if there's any in this yard specifically, but we would put them right there where they're already trafficking in and out of their holes and through the yard, and we'll just put it right in the middle. They'll go right down that pipe, eat some bait, and hopefully share it with their friends.
What are voles?
Voles are also called field mice.
Okay.
They're really common in country areas and rural areas. We don't have any moles here in Boise, but there's also pocket gophers here.
How do you treat those?
So pocket gophers usually have a mound, okay? And we would dig up the mound and find the actual hole and then place bait in there and then cover up the hole. And we've had really good success with that method.
Awesome. And then I think last question, what do we do for mosquitoes?
Mosquitoes are a little different. Their breeding cycle is about 25 days, and so we would actually come out every single month during the summer, May through September, and we'll come out each month, and once in a while it'll coincide with their regular service, and we'll just do the full service, including the mosquito. But a mosquito-specific service will just be spraying the yard with a specific product called One Guard, which is unique because it has dual modes of action, meaning it will kill the ones that are there, and then anything that lands on it, it will actually kill them later on as well. So it should last the entire month, but again, since their breeding cycle is so frequent and the summers get so bad with mosquitoes, we have to come out each month.
What are common concerns that you wish that salesmen could prevent by explaining to customers?
Time windows are a big deal.
Yeah, talk about that.
So usually we do a 2-hour time window. So let's say a salesman says, we'll be here from 2 to 4. The customer now could expect you, the technician, to show up at 2 and be there till 4. Does that make sense? And so explaining that it is an arrival window, even giving an example. So it's an arrival window between 2 and 4, meaning we could show up at 3:30 and it's still within that arrival window. Does that make sense? Make sure that they affirm that or confirm that time.
And if the customer asks, do I need to be home?
No, in fact, if we can just get right to work, that's great, as long as the notes are sufficient that we know what we're doing.
Gotcha. And so if the customer's not home or might not be home, put may not be home in the notes, so that way we still knock on the door, and then if no one answers, we can just get started.
Exactly.
And then the only things that might complicate it is like a mean dog outside. Should
Right.
people instruct to leave their dogs inside?
Yes, so they'll need to either put their dog in a dog run or cage or inside for the service, mostly just so they're not jumping on us and the technician doesn't have to worry about being bit. But also we don't want to get product on them. Just
Are there
for safety.
times when it's okay for a dog to be out in the yard?
Yeah, we do it all the time. Typically, if a technician already knows the dog and has been there multiple times, they'll just put the dog away. You
Gotcha.
know? But yeah.
So for the initial, should it be sort of like, if there is a dog that's outside, try and schedule it when they are home?
Correct. It should
just
be
so-
expected that the dog's put away.
And that way the technician can at least meet the dog on the first time and from there make a plan for future visits,
That's
right?
right.